You're traveling through the unknown, a journey beyond the corners of reality, where the shadows whisper and the chill runs deep. Welcome to the dimension where your deepest fears are given form. This is the Midnight Mystery.
Don't get off until you hit the 9th floor. No exceptions. But my interview is on 5, I replied. I'll only say this only one more time. Don't get off until you hit 9th. No other floor is safe. It's crazy, but something about the way he said it penetrated my skull. He was serious, and he looked nervous, like he had to fight every instinct in his body to say that to me. The doors closed while I thought to myself, who the fuck says anything like that? As I went to hit the button for the 5th floor, some anxiety came over me. I shook it off and pressed it. The guy was probably just off his rockers. The elevator went up. I scanned my surroundings. A TV bolted to the top corner of the elevator, playing the Weather Channel, a mirror for the back wall of the elevator, and some cozy lounge-style music playing. Pretty standard stuff. Now arriving at the 5th floor. Weird. Not sure if I'd ever been in an elevator that announced each floor it was arriving at. I was sure that if I worked in this building, this would get pretty old quickly. Ding. The doors opened on 5. In front of me was a reception area with a woman seated at the front desk. She stood up from her seat. "Mr. Davis, you're early." The gentleman's warning from earlier played in my head. "We'll be ready for your interview in a few moments. In the meantime, please feel free to take a seat." Thank you," I responded. "If I'm early, maybe I can come back in a few minutes." "Nonsense, we'll see if we can speed things up. He's been very excited to meet you." The elevator doors started closing. I held them open. I wasn't sure what to do here, but everything seemed fine enough. Granted, the receptionist did seem a bit eager, but beyond that. From my vantage point, I scanned the office space behind the front desk area. All looked normal. Cubicles, folks clicking away at their computer, a kitchen area. Pretty unremarkable. That is, except for the portrait off at the far end of the office floor. It was very large. I couldn't tell what the picture was of, but I did see a group of employees staring at it, almost admiring it. "Your wife's name is Meredith, right?" I froze as the receptionist's question shot a dart right through me. I didn't remember the job application form ever asking for my wife's name. "You two are thinking of having children, right? If it's a boy, you want to name him Sam?" What the fuck? Forget that she was right on the money. This was something I'd never spoken about before to anyone, including my wife. Before I could answer, the office workers surrounding the large portrait started singing the happy birthday song loudly, in complete and perfect unison. Someone brought out a birthday cake and presented it to the portrait. A portrait that, after a bit of squinting, I realized was a very large version of my high school yearbook photo. I backed into the elevator and pressed the close door button. I panicked as it took its sweet time to register. Press, press, press. Come the fuck on. After what felt like an eternity, the doors started closing. As they closed, I heard the receptionist. "I'm so curious to know what your insides taste like, Michael." Fuck. Me. 9th floor. I needed to go to the 9th floor. I found the 9th floor button and pressed it. It felt like it didn't register my push, so I pressed the button again, and again. Come on, come on, come on, 9th fucking floor. I tried again and again, but nothing was happening. Fuck it. I'll go back to the ground floor, I thought to myself. Back to the start. As I went to press the G button, I realized it was missing. Just that one singular button gone. Fuck. I was getting claustrophobic. I took in deep breaths to prevent myself from having a full-blown episode. The elevator started moving up again. A panel above the elevator doors lit up with the following number, 11. Someone was calling the elevator? I started talking to myself to self-soothe. It's okay. Someone will call the 9th floor soon. That's where I'll get off. As the elevator approached its new destination, I noticed that the background lounge music in the elevator had changed. It was now an instrumental arrangement of "Happy Birthday." Huh. Not sure why this thing thought it was my birthday. I glanced at the weather report on the TV. At least it was going to be sunny all week. Silver linings. Now arriving at the 11th floor. Ding. The doors opened. I hung around the inside corner of the elevator beside the buttons. No need to have another nightmare-ish experience, right? An old woman stepped onto the elevator. Great. I'm sure this will be easy to explain to her. She smiled at me as the doors closed. With a lump in my throat, I asked, "What floor?" "Ground floor, please." I'm sorry, ma'am, but that button is missing. Maybe we could wait until someone calls us to the 9th floor?" "9th? No, I think I'll just go to the 2nd floor instead then." She went to press the button. "Ma'am, I don't think it'd be safe to. I have plenty of friends on the 2nd floor, it'll be okay." And she pressed it. I didn't feel comfortable cornering an elderly stranger in a seemingly haunted elevator. But I tried again to convince her. I know this sounds weird, but I have it under good authority that the 2nd floor probably isn't safe. I'd strongly recommend not getting off until we reach 9. She smiled. "Dear, it'll be all right. You know, I like to take all opportunities that are given to me. It's a shame that you turned your opportunity down. I know the folks on 5 are very disappointed." I backed up into the corner of the elevator. I saw the reflection of the old lady in the elevator's back mirror. She looked ghastly, otherworldly. Now arriving at the 2nd floor. The doors opened. She smiled at me again, and then exited. I poked my head around the corner to look at the 2nd floor. It was damp. It looked old, more like a cave than an office. I heard a low rumble. A man dressed in a fancy suit approached the elevator doors and held them open before they could close. "You getting off here too, champ? I heard that 5 wanted you. I think we can give you a better offer." "I'm good." "You sure, bud? The salary is $800,000 every hour." "I'm good." "I'm kidding, bud. The salary is we remove your eyes so you don't have to see them." The floor went pitch black. The low rumble got much louder and started reverberating in my ears. Suddenly, the businessman grabbed me by the collar and tried to pull me out of the elevator. I clung onto the ends of it. Fuck. I started kicking and headbutting him. I was able to make him let go of me momentarily as I desperately pressed on the close doors button. Miraculously, the elevator responded much quicker this time, and they closed immediately. I tried the 9th floor button again. Didn't work. I pressed 8 instead. Anything to get away from this hellhole of a floor. I heard a loud banging on the door as the elevator started taking off, like an aggressive knock. Bang, bang, bang! As I saw the floor numbers rising. 3, 4, 5. The banging continued, just as loud. What the fuck? 6th floor? 7th floor? The banging on the door didn't subside. Now arriving at the 8th floor, I pressed the button for the 23rd floor. Just as we arrived on 8, I mashed the close doors button just as the elevator doors were about to open. The banging continued as the elevator doors started denting. The elevator continued going up. 9, 10, 11, the banging softened. 14, 15, and softened. 19, 20, 21, and disappeared. Now arriving at the 23rd floor. It was gone. Thank fucking God. I exhaled. It felt like I'd narrowly avoided disaster. The doors opened. I scanned the new floor and I realized I was back on the ground floor. That's what it looked like anyways. Did I escape? Was I finally free? A man stood not too far from the door. He looked familiar, but I couldn't exactly place him. "Hey man," he spoke. "Was this the guy who got off the elevator just as I got on?" "Hey, it's over, man. You got out," he told me. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but I had to fight it. "But you said the 9th floor was the only safe one, right?" "That was a trick. You followed your gut and you were right. 23rd floor, the real safe floor. You can step out now, man." I didn't leave. "There's someone here who really wants to see you." I couldn't move. "He wants to give you a job. He thinks you're gonna be great." Why the fuck couldn't I move? He's in the other room. I'm gonna fetch him, okay? All you have to do is look at him. It'll feel a bit weird at first, but then it'll all be okay. It's a permanent position. Great benefits. It is fully on site, but no better birthday present than a new job, right? I lowered my gaze to the floor. I forced myself to mutter the following words. It's not my fucking birthday. As he left to fetch, whoever he was meaning to fetch, he gave me the following response. Relax, man. No cursing on the job. We're a family here. It felt like I could only move a centimeter at a time. A true snail's pace. I inched my finger closer and closer to the closed door button. I heard footsteps. He was coming back. With every fiber of my being, I pushed through. I hit the button. The doors closed, and I collapsed to the floor, free from whatever weird force was stopping me from moving. I'll let you two talk more on the elevator, I heard him say from outside the doors. What? Instinctively, I looked around. To my surprise, there was nothing. The elevator was the same as it had always been, a lengthy exhale. I was done with all of this. At this point, I would have taken death over continuing this bullshit any longer. As I pondered my next move in this hopeless situation, I noticed something strange. The button to the 9th floor was lit up, an ominous crimson-red color. Before I could do anything else, my phone started ringing. I checked the call. It was my wife. I answered. Babe, fuck, I don't know why I didn't even think to call you. I'm trapped in an elevator and fucked up shit is happening and maybe I should call the cops. Fuck, Hun, don't go to the 9th floor. What? Wait, how do you even... It's a trick, honey. You have to trust me. The man from before was lying to you. It's not safe. None of this has been safe. How do you even know everything that's happening? You just need to trust me, hun. I paused. So what do you want me to do then? A demon on the other side of the phone answered this time. Go to your interview. I hung up the call and in a panic, I mashed on the 9th floor button. The elevator started rising again. Even with me hanging up the call, the muffled sound of the demonic voice coming from my phone continued. Go to your interview. Go to your interview. Go to your interview. I pulled out my phone and flung it to the ground as hard as I could. I stomped on it angrily. The warped sound of go to your interview slowly started dying out. But suddenly the elevator started shaking. It was continuing to go up. But it was faster than usual. Really, really fucking fast all of a sudden. Almost like the 9th floor was now way below me. It felt like an amusement park ride with no brakes on it. Loose. Dangerous. Flinging up at an insane speed, almost as if it was falling upwards. But I pressed 9? I screamed to myself, exasperated. It didn't matter. Now arriving at the 41st floor. God, what the fuck? I was brought to my knees by the speed of the elevator traveling faster and faster. Now arriving at the 90th floor. The buttons didn't even go past 52. Now arriving at the 141st floor. Fuck. Now arriving at the 230th floor. Now arriving at the 401st floor. I felt like I was inside a bullet. The pleasant voice of the elevator lady was getting deeper and deeper as we rose. Now arriving at the 840th floor. The voice started croaking, a demonic sound this time. Now arriving at somewhere nice. A sudden halt. The elevator stopped. The doors didn't open, though. The panel above the elevator doors had no indication on what floor we were on. As I sat, I heard what could be best described as the sounds of hell coming from outside the elevator. Low grunts of pain, crackling, a dark hymn. Was this where I was supposed to get off? Before I could ponder the question further, I heard a soft tapping on the elevator. A voice from outside. "Do you want to trade?" said the voice. I decided to bite, for reasons I still don't fully understand. What do you mean? What if you stay on this floor forever and I get to go home? I think I'm good. But I really want to go home. It almost sounded like the voice of a kid. Fucking hell. I'm sorry, kid, I mustered back. It's okay. An awkward silence between us. He told me that he wants to wish you a happy birthday, said the kid. I think he's got it wrong. Today isn't my birthday. It is, he responded. It's the first day of your new life. Your birthday. He wants you to look at the TV. What? I looked at the TV in the top corner of the elevator, hoping to see the one constant I'd had during this whole cursed trip, the weather. Instead, the TV was now showcasing what looked to be CCTV footage, grainy footage from a camera, of the exact elevator I was in, a live feed of this exact moment. Except the TV showed me lying down, looking up with a wide smile on my face, and something above me on the ceiling, looking straight down at me. Him. The lights in the elevator went off. The elevator plummeted downwards as I closed my eyes and screamed for dear fucking life. I waited for the impact, for what I knew was my demise. Here it comes. Here it fucking comes. I'm not ready. I'm not ready at all. Now arriving at the 9th floor. Ding. The doors opened. Wait, what? 9th floor? I peeked out from the elevator. Another reception desk. Wait, is this really the... I was interrupted by a voice from the outside. You coming out or what, you fucking moron? I got to my feet. The feeling of distrust, anxiety, whatever you'd call it, my fear intuition. It was gone. I felt light. Fuck it. I stepped onto the floor and approached the counter. The receptionist handed me what looked like a button for the elevator. For the ground floor, she said, single use only. I took it and headed towards the elevator. Then I turned back to face her. Can I maybe take the stairs? She shook her head. If you didn't like the elevator, then you're really not gonna like the stairs. Fair enough. I got into the elevator. I said a silent prayer to myself as I put the button where it belonged. It fit without any issue. I pressed it, and the elevator went down. It was a smooth ride. Now arriving at the ground floor. Ding. As I got ready to exit, I realized that the ground floor button was missing once again. Strange. I didn't linger on it. I marched out, ready to get the fuck out of this building. I noticed a woman running onto the elevator. I tried to stop her, but something in my body wouldn't let me. The most I could muster was putting my hand on the door to relay a message to her before the doors closed. Don't get off until you reach the 9th floor. No matter what. The woman just smiled at me. Happy birthday, Michael. There were bright flashes of red in the sky. It's as if someone was waving around a flare light from space, faint but noticeable. We all made UFO jokes and laughed as we nailed our tents into the ground. I knew for sure that there were 5 of us. We have all been friends since early middle school, and we're celebrating our high school graduation with this getaway camping trip. The flashes of red must have stopped randomly as we made conversation while fixing up our tents. Dave managed to put his tent together the fastest and told us he was going to find some branches for the fire. I remember how he had worked with me at the local gas station last year. We used to do the night shift together, and it had made working at a desolate gas station much more fun than it was supposed to be. There was also Eric in the corner still reading his tent manual, fidgeting with his signature round glasses. I wasn't as close with Eric as I was with the others, but I still remember sitting with him in math class and copying his homework one time. Ava was also there talking with Sally, my cousin. Both had decided to team up and work on one tent at a time. I also have clear memories of them, hanging around at school in our usual places. In fact, I even knew Ava's younger brother, as he used to beg to go with us wherever we went. I bring all this up because I'm sure that there were 5 of us, including me, and that I knew everyone in the group. So Dave had went to get some branches as we pulled out some foldable chairs and set them up around the fire pit. I remember feeling uneasy as the sun set and darkness began to consume the forest. The shadows of trees elongated around us as the minutes ticked by. Eric went to get a flashlight from his bag while we wondered what was taking Dave so long. He appeared soon after, the harsh rustling sounds of the bushes signifying his return. We were all buried in our chairs at this point, covered by our jackets, The temperature had dropped quickly, and a slight breeze was beginning to pick up. "Geez, you guys weren't even bothered to pull out a chair for me," Dave said as he arranged all the branches in the pit. We had set up 5 chairs around the fire. I tried to rationalize the situation, but no matter how hard I focused, my head felt like it was underwater. I had perfect clarity up until that moment, but when I tried to focus on why 5 chairs were occupied when Dave hadn't sat down yet, my head seemed to just stop working, as if something was reaching in and pulling out my thoughts. Instinctually, I felt even more uneasy now, and I had placed why. The whole forest had gone dead silent. I looked around at the faces of the others and could tell that they had felt the same. Eric was fidgeting with his fingers, trying to scan around the group and spot the extra person, but it was futile. I scanned every face, each etched in worry and frowning in frustration except for, "It's all right, I'll get the chair myself," Dave said, breaking the silence and somewhat alleviating the tension. I got up and offered to help him. He looked into my eyes and nodded knowingly. We headed away from the fire pit towards the tents, but I kept my eyes glued on our group. "How many people are here?" I whispered to Dave as he looked around and realized that we had indeed only packed 5 chairs. In fact, every person had brought with them their own chair. They were heavy to carry, and we wouldn't bring any extra needlessly. "There's 5, right? I mean, there's 5 chairs," Dave replied. His voice wavered as he spoke. "No, I just think maybe one of us forgot our chair," I said. My mind was struggling to address the issue head-on, and now sought to find rational excuses instead. I didn't quite feel in control of my thoughts. It felt like swimming in a dream, and if I tried to force myself to think about who the 6th person was, my head would begin to throb. "Yeah, that sounds about right, actually," Dave said, relaxing and heading back to the group. When we walked back to the fire pit and circle of chairs, 2 chairs were empty, one for me and one for Dave. Everything was adding up now, even though we all agreed it wasn't before. Sally suggested we were all probably tired after the long hike to get here, and probably just needed some sleep. She could have been right. We were all sleep-deprived from waking up very early today to make it on time. Ava brought out the drinks. The whole 6-pack was emptied. We all moved closer to the crackling fire for warmth as we took sips from our cans and reminisced on memories of last year. Ava was in the middle of telling us about that one time she was home alone, with weird things happening in her house, when I got these sudden chills despite the pleasant warmth of the fire. What felt cozy and safe moments ago felt wrong now, all because I realized that there was a crucial detail I missed. "Who started the fire?" I asked, completely interrupting Ava in the middle of her story and breaking everyone else's immersion. Everyone looked momentarily annoyed until they realized they had no answer. Once again, I scanned the faces staring back at me, all barely illuminated by the light from the fire, all familiar and pale from fear. "Wasn't it you, Dave?" Eric asked. Dave shook his head. "I think the person standing behind Jenny did it," Sally said, looking over at me. I whipped my head around so quickly it hurt. My heart was pounding in my ears. There was nothing behind me except for the encompassing darkness of the woods. Staring at those tall, dark trees behind me made me feel exposed. I felt like a lost bird in a vast field. "Wait, I don't know," Sally said. Her eyes had gone wide and she was shaking visibly. She continued to look around frantically as Ava moved over to her, placing her hands on her shoulders and trying to calm her down. "I think we should leave this place," Ava stuttered. "Yeah, something just doesn't feel right, but I can't put my finger on it," Dave said. "But it's so dark out in the forest now, we'd probably get lost if we leave now." Someone else said, "Yeah, I think we should stay the night and leave as soon as we can tomorrow." Eric agreed. I tried to protest but realized Eric was right. The woods harbored an oppressive darkness within which navigation would be near impossible. "Let's not sleep in our separate tents just to be safe," Sally said. We all agreed. We only brought 1-person tents with us, but we could squeeze 2 if we tried. That way no one would be alone at night. Following this conversation, we all got up and made our pairs. I went with Dave and Sally like always went with Ava. Eric kept complaining that he didn't have a pair, but we reassured him he did. He wouldn't accept it. I feel like at some point we all realized that there were only 5 of us, and suddenly we were all huddling up in the middle of the clearing. "Why do we keep thinking there are 6 of us here?" Eric asked. Sweat was dripping down his face despite the cold. We had nearly left him all alone on his own, under the assumption that there was another person. My stomach turned as I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to mentally recap everyone here. My head throbbed, but I kept pushing it. "There's me, Dave, Eric, Ava, Sally, and..." I was pointing at each of them as I said the name. I retched and emptied the contents of my stomach on the ground when I got past Sally. The left side of my head felt like there was a knife stuck in it. My vision was blurry. Dave held me up to stop me from collapsing, and we all wordlessly started to move towards the tents as someone put the fire out. Dave helped me into a tent while the 4 outside discussed what to do. I could only focus on snippets of the conversation as the excruciating pain beating against my skull came and went in waves. Sally had the brilliant idea of arranging 3 tents together, so their openings faced together at right angles in a sort of U shape, so we could sleep as close as possible and also limit the entrance to our tents. Dave was about to go to help as they worked outside, but I clutched his hand and asked him to stay with me. The tents took some time to arrange. I started to feel a bit better once everyone got settled into their tents. A quick head count confirmed there were 5 of us. Eric would have to sleep in his tent alone, but he was more comfortable with it, since all the tents were very close now. Looking back now, I think he was just trying to put a brave face on for us. I regret that moment deeply, letting him sleep in his tent alone. He was always less integrated in our group and knew that none of us would pair with him. Just before going to bed, we all agreed to leave as soon as the sun rose in the morning. I remember taking one last look outside the tent into the forest before trying to fall asleep. The wind had picked up, and the tree branches were swaying gently. Beyond our clearing was just pure darkness. It felt like the trees were closing in on me. With the faint moonlight illuminating our clearing, I turned my head to look over at the 2 tents we had left out and saw someone standing next to them. Despite the circumstances, sleep came quickly and easily. Ava's shrill scream woke me up in the middle of the night. Dave and I ripped our tent door open to find Sally and Ava looking into Eric's tent. We pushed them aside. Eric's sleeping bag was rolled up. He was still inside it, his head in the center, face contorted in utter agony. The rest of his body rolled around it with the blue fabric now dripping with dark blood. Dave zipped up the door of the tent. Ava was in shock. Her eyes had become glassy and unfocused. Sally was shaking her repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. Dave picked up his torch and yelled at us to get up and run. We left the campsite behind and entered the trail we had come from. The 5 of us huddled together, Dave leading in the front as he cast his weak flashlight over the path so we could see it. All we had to help us get through this 2-hour trail was a small white circle of light. Even the moon failed to illuminate our surroundings through the dense foliage. Ava tripped and fell, twisting her ankle. We came to a stop. Someone said they knew how to splint it so we could keep going. They dragged her into the woods instead. It happened too quickly for any of us to process. Sally was about to run after Ava when Dave held her back. She struggled and managed to free herself, running into the trees to follow the echoes of Ava's screams. I was about to run after her, but Dave held me by the shoulders and shook me hard. "We need to get out of here, Jenny, please," he said. I hesitated but jolted into motion again when Sally's voice was cut off abruptly. She had been calling out Ava's name as she ran after her. Dave and I continued to run down the trail, trying to get to our car so we could get out of here. There was nothing we could do. At some point, there were 3 of us running on the trail. Dave and I shoulder to shoulder, while someone followed us closely behind. "Dave, who's behind us?" I gasped. My heart was threatening to burst through my ribcage and my legs burned. He turned to look at me. Confusion transformed into fear on his face and then into rage. "You keep running," he told me as he produced a pocket knife from his pants. He handed me the car keys, which I nearly dropped. Then he turned around suddenly and jumped at whoever was behind us. I continued to run in fear as the sounds of a struggle grew behind me. I tripped and tumbled through the trail for what felt like hours. I didn't allow myself to stop. I almost cried when the trail ended, and I walked out into the familiar car park. Not wasting a second, I ran to the car and started it up, accelerating out of that forest and onto the highway within mere seconds. I'm typing this post out at a rest stop. My phone has finally regained service, and I've called 911 to try and explain the situation. I don't think they believe my version of events, but they sent a car my way regardless. As I wait, the sun is finally starting to rise. After I hit the post button on this, I'm gonna check why the person in my back seat has been so silent the whole time. She gets a little bit closer to me every day. The first time I noticed her, I was walking along the beach by myself. The shoreline was deserted with the exception of me and her. I could see her meandering behind about a half mile or so, her black dress and messy black hair blowing in the wind. I thought nothing of it at the time, and carried on living my life not knowing what was inching its way towards me with each passing moment. I didn't notice her again for months. The next time I saw her was in the Walmart parking lot. It was late, around 11 o'clock, and I walked out of the store into the empty, oversized parking lot, bag of groceries in hand. There weren't too many cars left in the parking lot, and the ones that were there were all lined up in the spots closest to the store's entrance. She stood by herself near the back of the parking lot, under one of the light poles, probably around 150, 200 yards from me. Still too far to make out the face of this girl, but something about the black dress and black hair gave me a sense of déjà vu. I don't think I made the connection with the girl on the beach at that moment, but it was eerie nonetheless. I started noticing her more and more. Every time I had to park in a large parking lot, like Walmart's or a movie theater, I could find her peeking at me from over the tops or parked cars or standing under a tree near the parking lot's exit. The same black dress and messy black hair. Eventually, I started seeing her on my street. I'd peek out of my windows at night and see her partially obscured by the shadows behind my neighbor's house, or I would see her in the tree line of my own backyard. I called the police on her once. I told them someone was hiding in the woods behind my house, and I wanted them to come check it out. I watched the police search the area while she stood in place, motionless, staring straight at me. The police walked circles around her. I could have sworn they even brushed up against her a few times. But the two officers told me they saw nothing. They didn't even find any footprints. It was all in my head then, right? I tried to put it out of my mind, but she kept getting closer and closer. I'd be eating at a restaurant with friends only to see her standing at a bus stop across the street. I take my dog for a walk, and I'd see her looking at me through the windows of my neighbors' houses as I walked past. Closer and closer. When she was only about 40, 50 feet away, I could make out her facial expression. A small bit of mascara ran down her cheek, but she was wearing a fresh smile. I couldn't comprehend it. Something about it made me think it was a happy, almost gleeful face. Maybe the tears were tears of joy. Sometimes I think it was the face of someone who had lost a loved one, but was remembering the good times they had together. When I was in a bad mood, I interpreted it as the face of a complete mental break. For 3 nights, she was pressed up against windows of my house, watching me as I cooked, cleaned, and watched TV. I couldn't sleep. I turned off the lights and the streetlights would cast her shadow across my home in larger-than-life proportions. I tried to speak with her. I asked questions. I made demands. I begged and pleaded to tears, but she wouldn't answer. She never made a sound. She never moved. She never blinked. I took time off work. I wasn't sleeping or eating. I spent all the time I had pacing my living room, screaming at the girl in my window, or crying thinking about how I had completely lost it. How everything I had worked so hard to build in this life had just come to a screeching halt due to a few bad neurons or chemical imbalances. As much as I tried to convince myself it really was all in my head, there was a feeling I couldn't shake. It all just felt so real. I mean, of course it did. My brain would be telling me it's real, just as any crazy person with hallucinations believe their visions to be real. But there was something about this girl I just can't explain. Like, I had known she would be showing up, and I should have had her arrival marked on my calendar or something. I can't explain it. I had to get some air, so I grabbed my dog and took her out for a walk. It was the longest walk of my dog's life. We walked for hours and ventured miles from our home, but we never managed to escape the woman who'd been watching us. She peeked at us from behind our neighbors' fences, watched us from behind the trees of the local parks. I even saw her staring at us from the back seat of a few cars that drove by us, but we kept walking. Out here, I felt less restricted, like I had options if I needed to run. Plus, there is something so violating about your own home, your one sanctuary, being turned into a fucking terrarium. I dreaded returning. But eventually we had to go home. The walk we had taken was turning quickly into animal abuse. My dog needed water and to rest her legs. Whatever I had gotten into it was my fault and not hers. When I got back to my house, my plan was to just ignore the creepy girl with her face pressed against my back window. I was exhausted and hadn't slept in days. I just wanted to have a glass of water, shower, and go to bed. I accomplished the first 2 steps easily, but I stumbled on the third. I couldn't resist a peek. I had to have another look at this girl. It's not something you can ignore. If you were swimming in the ocean and someone yelled, "Shark," would you not look for the shark? I peered around the corner of the hallway and looked out the big back window where she held sentry the past few nights. She was gone. When you're swimming in the ocean and someone yells "shark," it's so much scarier when you can't see it. My mouth instantly went dry. I flipped on the floodlights that illuminated my backyard. Nothing. I ran through my darkened house to the front windows and looked out. Nothing. My mind was screaming. Up to this point, I had never been more terrified in my entire life. Where was she? The worst part was, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. I sat on the couch and held my head in my hands. No chance I was going to bed now. I was going to make some coffee and think. I stood up, walked to the kitchen and flipped the lights, filling the once dark room with light. And in my periphery, I saw feet. There she was, standing in the corner of living room, peeking out at me from behind the drapes, just feet from where I was sitting on the couch. My stomach turned. She was in my house. This was a violation. This scared me. This offended me. This made me feel vulnerable and disgusting. I puked all over my kitchen floor, never daring to break eye contact with the girl in my living room. I made my coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a knife in my hand. No idea what good the knife would do against whatever this girl was, but without it, I felt completely naked. We stared at each other for hours. I threw things at her, but they all just seemed to pass through her. I had to do something. What was I going to do? Stare at this thing until I inevitably died from lack of sleep. I made a decision. I ran to the garage and jumped in the car. I'd at least get this thing out of my home. I opened the garage door and started the car, but as I turned around to back out of the driveway, I found her sitting directly behind me in the back seat. That was too much for me. I was absolutely revolted by the idea of being that close to it. I got out of the car, and I started running. I ran for miles. Each time I looked back, I could see her keeping pace behind me, never gaining ground or falling behind, but always close. Very close. Eventually, I got to my destination. The police station. At the very least, they could put in a cell with 24-hour security. That went about as well as I hoped it would. If the police are good for anything, it's putting mentally ill people in cells. I was thrown into a solitary cell, about 8 feet by 8 feet, a small bedroll, a toilet, and a sink. I don't even remember what the charges were. I was just so happy to be somewhere with other people, to have witnesses for whatever was going to happen to me, because I didn't lose her. Even sitting in my jail cell, she was still there, pressing her face on the glass window of my cell door, but I was too tired to care. At least she wasn't in there with me at the moment. I don't know how long I slept for, but when I woke up, she was kneeling down next to me with the same pained smile on her face. Before I could even scream, she reached her arm out and touched my left shoulder. which instantly exploded in a sharp pain that radiated down my arm and across my chest. I started screaming. My breath grew short, and my vision started to narrow. My heart felt like it was being gripped and squeezed by a phantom hand. I tried to stand up but fell over onto my belly. I yelled for help, but my vision still closed in around me. Then I woke up in a hospital. I had suffered a heart attack. Luckily for me, there were paramedics in the building to save me. All of this happened about 6 months ago. I started seeing her again about 6 weeks ago. She's moving more quickly this time. Within a few short weeks, I could see her face. She looks angry now, almost like she's angry with me specifically. She's also holding something, but I can't tell what it is. She keeps it hidden behind her back. I'm writing on my laptop in bed, and she's standing in my bedroom doorway glaring at me with the same grimace she's had for a few weeks now. In a few minutes, I'm going to take a sleeping pill and go to bed. I expect she'll be standing at my bedside if or when I do wake up. Then I guess I'll finally figure out what she's hiding behind her back. I'm not scared. I'm just ready to get this shit over with. I do feel guilty about leaving my dog behind. I tried to give her a good life. I've already left a message for my sister to come get her at noon tomorrow. She has a key, and I hope I'm there to greet her. But only time will tell. That's a wrap for today on the Midnight Mystery. Hope you guys had as much fun as we did. If you liked what you saw, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Oh, and don't be shy. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or any cool mystery ideas you want us to check out. Until next time, we'll see you in the next Midnight Mystery.